The moonlight draped the Billionaire Sheikh's palace in a silver veil, casting shadows that danced across the towering marble pillars and gilded halls. Inside the grand chamber, his eyes burned with a fierce intensity, a storm behind the calm facade, as he made a decision that would ripple beyond the desert's edge. Every breath in the opulent room held the scent of jasmine and oud, mingling with whispered secrets that wove through the silence. Tonight, power felt fragile, and destiny was about to be rewritten. Beyond the palace walls, the city throbbed with restless energy. Narrow alleyways, perfumed by the scent of cardamom and spice stalls, concealed shadows that whispered dangers in every corner. The desert's heat gave way to a cool breeze that ruffled silken robes and carried silent prayers on the wind. Here among the labyrinth of stone and stone, a lonely figure moved with hesitant steps, but eyes sharp with wary hope. She was a vision of grace and guarded mystery, wrapped in a cloak that barely hid the delicate frame beneath. Her gaze flickered with fear and resilience, as if she carried the weight of unseen chains. The city had swallowed her whole, but in her heart, a silent flame refused to be extinguished. Each breath she drew tasted of uncertainty and the sharp edge of trust withheld, until fate's hand placed a stranger in her path. His name was unknown to her, a humble man with rough hands and a heart braver than most. He saw her not as a treasure fenced by gold and power, but as a soul adrift and aching for refuge. Without hesitation, he offered her shelter, no questions asked, his eyes reflecting a compassion forged in hardship. Between his quiet courage and her trembling vulnerability, a fragile connection sparked. Fragile, yet undeniable. "I'm not who you think I am," she whispered once, her voice trembling but fierce. The stranger caught the flicker of defiance in her eyes, sensing the battles behind her silence. "Why do you help me?" she asked, voice barely audible over the distant call to prayer. "Because some things don't need explanations," he replied, his voice low but steady. "Because I saw someone lost, and I couldn't turn away. Their worlds, light years apart in power and status, shifted silently, drawing closer as trust and fear tangled in a dangerous dance. Yet neither could know how deeply their fates were intertwined with the man ruling from the palace's gilded throne, the elusive Billionaire Sheikh, whose daughter was now walking hidden in plain sight. Just as the stranger's hand brushed hers in a gesture of protection, a shadow moved swiftly through the desert night. A messenger arrived at the palace gates, bearing news that shattered the fragile calm. The lost girl was no ordinary refugee, but the missing jewel of the Sheikh's legacy. The revelation spread like wildfire, igniting alarms in hearts both distant and near. The empire's silence shattered, and with it, the fragile trust between a stranger and a princess began its perilous test. What secrets would unravel? What betrayals lurked beneath the surface? And would the heart of the Billionaire Sheikh, so cold to outsiders, find room for forgiveness or fury? And before the next secret of this desert empire unfolds, Make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are still to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this Billionaire Sheikh story has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga? And what twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to continue. Thank you for being with us. The palace was awash with restless whispers. The messenger's words had traveled swiftly from the sunburnt sands to the glittering marble halls. And with every step through the corridors, the news grew heavier, more urgent. The lost girl, the daughter thought vanished, was no mere shadow hiding from past torments. She was the bloodline of the Billionaire Sheikh, the heir who carried both the legacy and the burden of an empire. Inside the grand chamber, the Sheikh's jaw clenched, his dark eyes narrowing as he grappled with the revelation. The golden light of the hanging lanterns flickered, casting a wavering glow across the intricate mosaics that told tales of ancient power and sacrifice. His usual unshakable composure faltered. A tempest brewed beneath his calm exterior, threatening to unravel the walls built carefully around his heart. Outside, the city breathed and shifted. The narrow alleys and spice-laden markets had become a maze of suspicion and hope. The girl who sought refuge was no longer just a nameless wanderer. The weight of her identity now threatened not just her survival, but the delicate balance of power, a balance the Sheikh controlled with an iron will. Meanwhile, under the cloak of night, the stranger who had dared to shelter her paced quietly. By the dim glow of a flickering oil lamp, his rough hands, calloused from years of hard labor, trembled ever so slightly as he recalled the moment she whispered her fears. Words spoken like fragile glass, ready to shatter. He had promised safety, but now he understood the peril that shadowed her every breath. She sat nearby, wrapped tightly in her cloak, eyes darting nervously toward the dark window. The city outside seemed suddenly vast and unforgiving, as if the walls themselves could betray her secrets. Yet there was a spark in her gaze, a fierce determination that refused to bow, even under the threat looming ever closer. "I didn't choose this fate," she murmured to herself, voice threaded with pain and defiance. "But I will not be its victim." Her fingers clenched the softness of her fabric, knuckles whitening, betraying the storm within. The stranger watched, heart aching to pierce through the fortress she had so meticulously constructed. There was more to her than the whispered rumors or the gilded rumors of lineage. Beneath the surface was a soul hardened by betrayal, yet longing for trust. Just as silence settled between them, a soft, uncertain knock echoed from the hidden side door. The stranger's gaze sharpened, instinct urged caution, but he stepped forward, muscles taut. Opening the door revealed a figure bathed in moonlight, the palace's envoy, an urgent message clutched tightly in his hand. "Time is no longer our ally," the envoy said, eyes flickering with unspoken warnings. "The Sheikh demands her presence. The truth cannot be hidden much longer." The girl stood, heart pounding like the relentless desert drum. Leaving the humble refuge meant exposing herself to the storm she had spent years evading. The unforgiving world of gold, power, and ruthless ambition. Her thoughts spiraled to the man who ruled that world. the billionaire sheikh, her father, whose name had been both a curse and a hope, whispered across the dunes. She recalled tales told in hushed voices about his cold gaze and the iron fist that kept his empire unchallenged. Yet somewhere beneath those shadows, perhaps, lay a flicker of mercy, or something more dangerous still, wrath. As they journeyed back toward the palace, the desert wind carrying the scent of myrrh and distant fires, the stranger's protective hand brushed hers once more. This time, it was both an unspoken vow and a desperate plea. No words could capture the tempest raging between them, a fragile alliance forged in uncertainty, but bound by undeniable truth. The gates opened like the yawning mouth of fate itself. The girl's footsteps echoed against the polished stone, each step heavier than the last. Servants and guards whispered behind gloved hands, eyes wide with scandal and curiosity. The palace, usually a fortress of pride and unyielding order, now crumbled beneath the weight of secrets. Inside the grand hall, the billionaire sheikh awaited, his figure carved from the shadows like a statue of power and torment. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low but thunderous, shaking the very air. "Why have you returned to me after all these years of silence and deception?" Her gaze met his, unflinching despite the storm in her veins. "Because the truth can no longer hide behind the desert sands, and because I am no longer the girl you cast away." A hush settled over the assembled, as if the air itself held its breath. The sheikh's eyes flickered, a mix of pain, fury, and something deeper, more fragile. "You carry secrets that will ignite the empire." His words were a warning, but beneath them lurked a silent question. Could he afford to forgive? Could his heart, armored and embattled, find room for redemption? Before she could answer, a whispered murmur stirred among the courtiers. An unknown letter, a hidden alliance, a betrayal not yet revealed. The walls of the palace seemed to close in, suffocating with unspoken threats. A heavy silence settled, broken only by the distant cry of an eagle slicing through the night sky. The girl's eyes flickered once more toward the shadowed corners of the hall. Then, as if summoned by the desert winds themselves, a figure cloaked in midnight stepped forward, someone the billionaire sheikh had long kept in the dark. Eyes burning with cold calculation, lips curling into a faint, cruel smile. "You thought the past was buried," the stranger whispered, voice laced with venom. "But the desert remembers every secret and every betrayal." The room pulsed with tension, the fragile peace shattered in an instant. Outside, beneath the vast expanse of the moon, the empire held its breath, awaiting the reckoning about to unfold. And in that charged silence, the billionaire sheikh's heart beat a dangerous rhythm, a storm on the brink of breaking loose. The grand hall seemed to hold its breath, every ornate detail suddenly heavy with meaning. The air quivered with the weight of unspoken truths, as the billionaire sheikh stood like a titan carved from granite and shadow. His dark eyes, sharp as obsidian, cut through the silence, seeking the daughter he had once cast into oblivion. Her stance was unyielding, the fire in her gaze refusing to be dimmed by years of abandonment. Yet beneath that steadfast defiance, A quiet storm churned, a tempest of longing, pain, and a fierce need for recognition. "You have returned," his voice rumbled, low and cold, like distant thunder. "But do not mistake this for forgiveness." Her lips pressed into a thin line. The echoes of his words hammered inside her chest, but she held firm. "I never sought your pardon," she said. "I came because the truth will not stay buried beneath the sands forever." Around them, courtiers exchanged furtive glances, their whispered speculations like snakes slithering through the gilded pillars. The palace, with its glittering chandeliers and marble floors that had witnessed centuries of power plays, suddenly felt smaller, too small for secrets so vast. The stranger who had sheltered her watched from the shadows, his rough hands clenched tightly. His usual stoicism cracked for a moment as he witnessed the silent war waging between father and daughter. His heart pounded in his chest, torn between desire to protect and the dangers that loomed large. Breaking the tense stillness, the cloaked figure who had slipped in moments before stepped forward, a cold smile playing on his lips. His eyes gleamed with cunning behind his dark veil. "Your Highness," he intoned smoothly, addressing the sheikh, "perhaps we should consider the implications of her return more carefully." The sheikh's gaze hardened, flickering toward the stranger. "Speak plainly. What are you implying?" The envoys and ministers stilled, sensing the undercurrent of menace threading the words. "This girl," the newcomer continued, voice dripping with venom, "is not merely a lost daughter seeking refuge. She carries within her the key to alliances that will shift the balance of power. A balance fragile as glass, ready to shatter." A murmur rippled through the room. The girl took a steady breath, refusing to let the pieces of her carefully guarded past be used as pawns once more. "Enough," the sheikh commanded, voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "I will hear her story. In my presence, no lies." She stepped forward, the weight of 1,000 memories pressing down. Memories of exile, of whispered betrayals, of nights spent under desert stars, wondering if her heritage was a curse or a blessing. "I was hidden," she began, voice steady, though her fingers twitched with restless energy. "Protected by those loyal to the house, kept safe from enemies who would see our legacy destroyed." The stranger at her side shifted, offering a subtle but unwavering support. His presence was a silent rebellion against the palace's cold calculus. "Yet I chose to leave," she confessed, eyes meeting the sheikh's with painful clarity. "Not because I wished to abandon my blood, but because the walls of this palace held chains heavier than the desert's heat." The billionaire sheikh's features softened imperceptibly, a flicker of something buried deep within. Regret? Desire? The courtiers held their breaths, watching the silent dance between man and woman, power and vulnerability. "And now," she whispered, "I return not to seek mercy, but to claim what is mine by right. To be seen not as a shadow, but as your daughter." The sheikh's gaze dropped, sweeping the intricate patterns beneath their feet, symbols of an empire forged by strength and sacrifice. A single bead of sweat traced a path down his temple, the weight of his legacy pressing like a desert sun. "Then prove yourself," he said, voice harsh but edged with a challenge. "Show me you belong to this world, and that you can survive the storms that gather here." Before the girl could respond, the dark figure's smile widened, a serpent poised to strike. "There are those who believe your return is an opportunity," he said softly, "to betray the Sheikh from within, to spark flames that will burn the empire to ashes." The room flickered with shocked gasps and nervous glances. The fragile thread holding peace together began to unravel. She turned to the stranger beside her, searching for reassurance. The rough calluses of his hand met hers once more, a silent vow against the gathering storm. "Father," she said, voice fierce now, "I am no traitor, but I will unearth every secret, expose every lie, and claim my place no matter the cost." The Sheikh's cold stare held hers, his lip curling in a smile that was not quite warmth, more a promise of battles to come. "And so the game begins," he murmured. "In this palace of gold and shadows, no one is truly safe." From the alcoves where silk drapes fell like waterfalls of night, unseen eyes watched, plotters and pawns alike, their ambitions ignited by the tempest that had been unleashed. Outside, the desert wind rose, carrying whispers of destiny and doom on its suffocating breath. And deep within the heart of the Billionaire Sheikh, a secret long buried stirred, threatening to break free and turn everything to dust. In that charged moment, as the moon's silver light caught on the sharp edges of power and betrayal, the fate of the empire hung by a thread, ready to snap. The grand hall breathed uneasily beneath the weight of unspoken threats. The Billionaire Sheikh, veiled in shadows and authority, studied his daughter with eyes that had pierced through deserts and decades of silence, yet saw so little of the woman she had become. The tension was a fragile thread stretched taut, vibrating with the promise of storms. Her voice, steady but laced with the echoes of years spent in exile, filled the cavernous space. "I was hidden away for your protection, but survival in shadows is no life at all." The words hung in the air, heavy as incense smoke curling toward the ornate ceiling. The Sheikh's sharp gaze flickered, something akin to regret, buried beneath layers of pride and pain. "Your absence was a silence I believed saved you, but it has cost us dearly." His voice thundered, yet held a fragile tremor, revealing the cracks beneath his crown. Around them, courtiers whispered, their murmurs a low current beneath the charged atmosphere. Ambition and fear danced in their eyes as they awaited the unraveling of dynastic secrets and the reckoning of loyalties. The stranger at her side stepped forward, his roughened hand brushing hers, a silent defiance against the palace's cold calculations. His eyes met the Sheikh's, unyielding and fierce, conveying a quiet warning that some ties, forged by blood, could not be severed by gold or power. As the tension spiked, a faint clang from the far corridor echoed through the hall, an uninvited herald of more turmoil. The cloaked figure, who had intruded moments before, stepped deeper into the light, the smile on his lips a serpent's promise. "Your Highness," the stranger began smoothly, voice dripping with caution, yet edged with venom, "the girl's return is no mere family reunion. It's a gambit played by unseen hands to unsettle the throne itself. The Sheikh's jaw tightened. And whose hands might those be? A slow ripple of unease swept through the courtiers. The stranger let the question linger, his words a shadow over the palpable unease. It is whispered in the city's underbelly, and sometimes among trusted advisors, that a hidden faction thrives on chaos. They believe the empire's power lies not solely in the Sheikh's command, but in exploiting fractures within his own house. Her eyes narrowed, flashing with both pain and resolve. If they think I am their puppet, they are gravely mistaken. I return by my own choice to claim the bloodline and confront the ghosts left unspoken. The Sheikh's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Words born from pain carry both truth and danger. Your claim is undeniable, but your arrival reignites old wounds, wounds some wish never to heal. A tense silence fell. The flicker of candlelight cast elongated shadows on the mosaics, images of honor, betrayal, and sacrifice frozen in stone. The palace itself seemed to lean in, awaiting the next move in this intricate dance. Suddenly, the heavy doors at the far end of the hall swung open, revealing a figure draped in silk and shadows, a trusted aide known only to the inner circle. His presence silenced the court at once. "My Sheikh," the aide breathed, "there are new developments. A letter, sealed with the insignia of a neighboring emirate, arrived but moments ago. Its contents threaten alliances long thought secure." The Sheikh's dark eyes locked with his daughter's in a fleeting moment of shared peril. "Come," he commanded, voice deep and resolute. "Let us hear what storms approach us together." They moved towards a private chamber, leaving whispers behind, like wind circling a desert ruin. The room was a sanctuary of polished wood and velvet curtains, scented faintly with rose and musk, a stark contrast to the tempest swirling outside its walls. Unsealing the letter, the Sheikh's face hardened as he read. The words spoke of secret agreements, betrayals lurking behind diplomatic pleasantries, and a plot to destabilize the empire by installing a rival claimant. The implications spread like wildfire through his thoughts. His daughter watched him, the man who ruled with an iron fist, yet whose heart bore scars invisible to outsiders. She saw the steel tempered by sudden vulnerability, a flicker of fear that perhaps the throne she sought was not as untouchable as rumored. "We are surrounded by enemies, cloaked as allies," he said, voice harsh with urgency. "Your presence here has exposed us to dangers unseen, and those dangers strike closer than we could imagine." The stranger who had sheltered her remained silent but alert, his gaze shifting to the corners of the room as if perceiving threats beyond mortal sight. A moment of fragile calm passed before the Sheikh's voice softened. "You are no longer a forgotten shadow in my court. But this empire, it demands loyalty, forged in fire." Her lips parted, revealing a fierce promise. "Loyalty, yes, but not blind servitude. I will not be a pawn sacrificed to preserve illusions." He studied her, the storm in his gaze meeting the flame in hers. for a heartbeat. The gulf between severed past and tentative future seemed to narrow. Then came the voice of the cloaked stranger, breaking the uncertain truce. "Beware, Sheikh. There is one who watches you from within your own walls, a traitor with venom poised to strike at your throne and your bloodline." The room seemed to exhale a collective breath, shadows lengthening toward an unseen threat. The Sheikh stepped forward, his silhouette a fortress of resolve against the encroaching darkness. "Then let this game begin," he declared, voice rising with chill command. "In my palace beneath the desert stars, no secret is safe and no heart unguarded." His daughter's gaze leveled with his, fierce and unwavering. "I am ready to face whatever storms you summon." Outside, the desert night held its breath, the moonlight flickering uneasily as if warning of the tempest to come. And deep within the Sheikh's chest, beneath the layers of power and pride, an ancient secret stirred, whispering promises of betrayal that would shatter legacies and set fire to the very sands beneath the empire's feet. The heavy doors shut behind them with a muted thud, sealing the secrets and shadows of the grand hall as the billionaire sheikh led his daughter into the sanctuary of the private chambers. The faint scent of musk and rose hung thick in the air, a fragile veil trying in vain to mask the storm lurking in every word unspoken. She stood tall, yet beneath the surface her heart pounded like desert thunder. To this palace of gold and power she had returned not as a timid girl, but as a woman blazing with reclamation. Yet the weight of every gaze, every whispered doubt, pressed like the unforgiving sun upon her skin. The sheikh unfurled the letter, his fingers trembling imperceptibly as he ran a finger beneath the embossed seal. His brow furrowed deeply with every word he devoured. The message spoke of betrayal, wrapped in silk, a neighboring emirate's secret hand poised to ignite chaos. An alliance twisted into a dagger, aimed at the heart of his empire. Her eyes flickered with the fires of old wounds, reliving the nights when whispered treasons lingered like venomous desert snakes. "They cast shadows long and deadly," she murmured softly. "But I have seen beyond those lies." He turned to her, his voice a blend of command and fragile vulnerability. "You return into a storm that has brewed long before your footsteps disturb the sands. This empire, this legacy, is a living ember, fragile and furious." Her gaze locked with his, fierce and unyielding. "Then let us wield that ember, together." Silence stretched between them, the kind thick with unspoken fears and fragile hopes. Outside, the desert wind stirred, a mournful song entwined with promise. A sudden knock fractured the fragile calm. The cloaked envoy, who had haunted the corridors, appeared once more, his eyes sharper than the edge of a scimitar. He stepped forward, voice low but cold. "A traitor nestles within these walls," he declared. "A serpent disguised as ally, waiting for the collapse of order to strike." The sheikh's dark eyes darkened further. The very air seemed to crackle with rising tension. His daughter's breath caught, heart pounding in dangerous rhythm. "Who dares threaten the throne?" the sheikh demanded, voice heavy and resolute. The envoy's gaze flickered to her, a whispered accusation tangled within the shadows of his words. "Some secrets," he said, are more perilous when carried by blood. She stiffened, the invisible chains of suspicion tightening, but her voice cut through steel. If they believe I am their pawn, they are gravely mistaken. I am the daughter of this house, and I will not be a shadow in their game. A bitter smile curled on the Sheikh's lips, a storm barely restrained. Then prove you belong, he challenged, by uncovering this traitor before their venom poisons us all. Their eyes met, man and woman, father and daughter, both haunted by ghosts of betrayal, yet bound by a shared, desperate hope. The stranger, who had become her refuge, waited silently beside the doorway. His presence a stark contrast, rough hands and warm heart amidst palace intrigue. When their gazes brushed, a silent vow echoed, protection beyond pedigree, loyalty beyond blood. The Sheikh motioned toward the heavy curtains that concealed the room's other exits. We have no allies but the truth and the shadows we command. She nodded, the fire within her reignited by the mandate. Then let the hunt begin. Outside, the first light of dawn began to bleed into the desert horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers toward a destiny unrevealed. The palace stirred, whispering its own conspiracies in the shifting breeze. In a dim corridor, unseen eyes watched. The traitor cloaked, not in darkness, but in the guise of loyalty. A faint smirk touched lips that knew the game was far from over. And deep within the labyrinthine heart of the palace, the billionaire Sheikh's grip tightened, not just on his power, but on a secret, older than the sands themselves, one that, if unveiled, could either shatter the empire or save it. A sudden cry echoed through the halls, a name uttered in desperation. His daughter's name. The air thickened with dread, and beneath his calm exterior, the Sheikh felt the ancient pulse quicken. The storm approaching was no ordinary tempest. It carried whispers of blood, betrayal, and a hidden truth that would change everything. His voice, barely a whisper, laced with a mixture of fury and something almost lost to time. He spoke to the shadows themselves. No one leaves this palace untouched. No secrets remain buried. Outside, as the desert wind howled, the moon slipped behind a veil of clouds, and in that darkness, a figure moved swiftly, a ghost from the past, returning to reclaim what was theirs. The game of power had only just begun. The heavy air inside the private chamber seemed to thicken, wrapping around the billionaire Sheikh and his daughter like a suffocating shroud. The letter lay open on the polished table, yet their gazes remained locked, a silent duel charged with years of abandonment, pain, and unsaid words. The scent of musk, mingling with rose, lingered, a bittersweet counterpoint to the tension that crackled like desert lightning. Outside, the heavy curtains, distant murmurs of the palace, slowly faded into silence, as if the very walls were holding their breath. The Sheikh's dark eyes, sharp yet tired, lifted once more to meet hers. For a fleeting moment, the mask of power cracked, revealing the man beneath, vulnerable, haunted by his own ghosts. We walk a razor's edge. His voice was low, almost a growl, between loyalty and betrayal. You returned not as a daughter seeking embrace, but as a storm, threatening to unravel everything I have built. Her jaw clenched, defiance blazing like a wildfire in her eyes. Then let the storm come. I will no longer hide in shadows, while others shape my fate in silence. This empire is my blood, as much as it is yours. He stepped closer, the glittering lamps casting his towering silhouette across the room's intricate mosaics. Eternal tales of power and sacrifice embossed beneath their feet. His breath, hitched for but a moment, caught between fury and something softer, long buried beneath the desert sands. You forget what it took to forge this dynasty, he reminded, voice thick with memory. Enemies do not hesitate. Family can cut just as deep. Her fingers instinctively clutched the heavy fabric of her cloak, a fragile shield against the storm raging within and without. I've seen the dagger's edge from both sides. Perhaps my exile was punishment, but it was also my crucible. I am no longer the girl you cast away. A sudden, sharp tapping echoed at the chamber door, breaking the fragile standoff like a quake through. Still earth. The cloaked envoy from the palace corridors appeared once again, his eyes narrowed beneath shadows. "Your Highness," he announced, voice steady but laced with urgency. "There is news from the eastern border, disturbances that threaten to unravel delicate alliances. The enemies we face gather not just outside these walls, but deep within." The Sheikh's gaze darkened, a tempest pooling in his eyes. "The traitor's nest will be uncovered," he said, voice brittle with unspoken rage. "No serpent will strike this kingdom without paying in blood." The princess watched the flickering lantern light dance across his weathered face, ravaged by years of battles waged both seen and unseen. For the first time, the immense weight of the legacy she inherited settled fully upon her shoulders, not as a fragile daughter, but as a warrior, reborn. Beside her, the stranger who had sheltered her stood silent, his rough hand brushing hers once more. No words passed between them, just a steady pulse of unyielding loyalty, a lifeline in a sea of intrigue. Suddenly, from the shadowed corner of the chamber, the cloaked stranger who had haunted the palace's corridors earlier re-emerged. His smirk sharpened, eyes gleaming with malevolence. "You speak of loyalty," he hissed softly, "but betrayal wears many faces here, and the closest knife often belongs to those you trust most." The air snapped taut, the silent threat hanging like a dagger poised at the heart of the room. The Sheikh's hand moved instinctively, fingers curling into a fist on the edge of the table. "Enough," he commanded, voice a blade cutting through the tension. "No more whispers in darkness. It is time for truths, however bitter." The princess inhaled deeply, steadying herself to speak the secrets cached for years beneath the desert stars. "There are alliances forged in fear and gold," she began, voice trembling but resolute, "that poison the foundation of this empire. I know because I have lived among their shadows." Her eyes locked on the Sheikh's with unyielding fire. "It is not merely outside enemies who threaten us, but hands within these very halls." A sharp intake of breath danced through the chamber. The stranger beside her tensed. Even the cloaked envoy held his breath. The Sheikh's gaze flickered, unsettled but focused. "Names, alliances, agents. You will tell me everything." Before she could answer, the heavy chamber door burst open, revealing a messenger, breathless from haste. In his hands, he clutched a sealed scroll stamped with the emblem of the northern tribes, a traditional emblem now twisted with unfamiliar marks. "The northern tribes have risen," the messenger announced, voice ragged. "They march against the empire's borders, incited by promises made in secret." The sheikh's eyes narrowed to slits. A treasonous alliance. The princess stepped forward, the full force of destiny settling around her, like the desert's relentless sun. "Then, this is not just a game of shadows. The war comes to us, here, now." A chill pulsed through the chamber, the delicate balance of power threatening to shatter like glass beneath a hammer. The sheikh's jaw tightened as he met her gaze. No longer adversary, no longer exile, but the reckoning of his bloodline returned. "We stand at the edge of a blade's descent," he murmured, darkly. "Together we will either seize the empire's future, or watch its ashes scatter beneath the desert winds." Outside, the night deepened. A whispered word slipped from the lips of the cloaked stranger, barely audible, but heavy with menace. "The true traitor waits, and they are closer than any of you suspect." And in that breathless second, as the moon vanished behind storm-wrought clouds, the chamber was swallowed by shadow, a prelude to the tempest raging just beyond the gilded walls. The moonlight waned behind a horizon thick with gathering storm clouds, casting the grand chamber into uneasy shadows. The billionaire sheikh stood motionless, a silhouette carved in obsidian against the flickering lamps. His hardened gaze fixed not on the now unfolding threats, but on the woman who had returned to upend his carefully ordered world. She met his stare without a flicker of doubt, her breath steady, despite the tumult of suppression and rebellion swirling inside her. The weight of their shared past, soaked in silence and regret, hovered between them, a fragile bridge on the brink of collapse. "I walked through fire to stand here," she said softly, voice layered with defiance and quiet resolve. "Not to beg, not to be forgiven, but to reclaim what is mine, blood and honor woven in the same thread." His jaw clenched, muscles rippling beneath the regal fabric of his robe. The scars time refused to heal stretched invisible lines across his soul, yet the fury in his eyes betrayed a tenderness no words could capture. "You returned to burn the legacy or to awaken it?" His voice was a low thunder rumbling in a desert sky, heavy with unspoken obstacles. "Neither." Her gaze sharpened like a blade forged in desert heat. "I returned to challenge the lies told in my name, to unravel the poison set loose among your court, and to show that the daughter who vanished is the storm brewing beneath your empire's calm." The room seemed to contract, breath caught in the silence that followed. Courtiers leaned forward, shadows twisting over marble and gold like creeping vines, their whispers halted by the palpable tension. From the edge of the chamber, the stranger who had shielded her pressed his lips into a near imperceptible line. His eyes, dark as the desert night, flickered toward the sheikh, unyielding and steady, a silent sentinel against the blast of whispered treason. Without warning, A servant hurried to the Sheikh's side, a sealed parchment pressed into his palm. The seal, cracked but unmistakably royal, bore the insignia of an allied emirate. The Sheikh broke it with fingers that trembled just once, reading words soaked in diplomacy yet dripping with menace. A betrayal unveiling alliances forged in shadow, a web spun to choke the empire's heart. The daughter's eyes widened, flickers of cold fire awakening. The threads unravel faster than I feared. He nodded, voice rough but resolute. These enemies wear the faces of friends and family. It is the closest wounds that run deepest. A sudden, chilling breeze swept through the chamber, stirring heavy curtains and carrying the faint scent of jasmine tinged with smoke. The flickering lantern light struggled against the gathering darkness, as if the palace itself rebelled against the revelations threatening its opulent bones. Their gazes met again, two souls bound by blood, yet divided by years of silence and unvoiced pain. The Sheikh's voice softened, a rare crack in the armor of command. You stand here, no longer the girl hidden in shadows, but the heir who carries sacred fire. Will you fight with me or against me? She stepped forward, the rich silk of her cloak whispering against marble. Her fingers found the rough calluses of the stranger's hand in a fleeting touch, a promise forged in quiet desperation. I fight for the truth and for a throne that cannot be claimed by lies. From a dim alcove, the cloaked figure who had haunted the palace corridors emerged like a serpent uncoiling. His smile curled with venom. How noble, he sneered. But truth is a weapon wielded by the victorious, and many wish to see the empire fall before your reckoning. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed to slits, shadows deepening in their abyss. The throne was won by steel and blood. It will not be surrendered to whispers. The daughter's gaze hardened, fire burning brighter now. Then let the battles come. This heir will stand unbroken, even if the palace crumbles around her. A hush fell, thicker than the desert night, as a distant cry echoed, a call from beyond the marble halls, where desert winds carried the weight of unseen alliances and brewing storms. The stranger's grip tightened, a steady anchor amid the gathering tempest. His voice, low yet unwavering, reached her ears. They watch. The enemy is closer than the palace guards suspect. Loyalty is rare where power tempts. A sudden rustle behind the curtains drew every eye. The cloaked figure's smile widened, dark and knowing, as he stepped fully into the lamp's glow. And I have watched longer than they know, he whispered, voice dripping with menace. The Sheikh's hand moved, brush of silk against steel. Name your traitor, or be counted among them. The room trembled, not with the force of armies, but with the quiet, lethal tension of knives unsheathed in shadows. Her eyes flicked to the stranger at her side, the only ally she could trust in a court riddled with daggers disguised as smiles. Then back to her father, the ruler who still carried the desert fire within. Her voice was steady, unwavering. The greatest betrayal is not always in the battle outside, but in the secrets kept beside the throne. The air thickened, heavy with the weight of truths on the verge of shattering fragile allegiances. Outside, the desert night stilled beneath a brooding sky, waiting in silent suspense for the storm poised to rend a kingdom and a family apart. And deep within the heart of the billionaire sheikh, a cold realization settled like sand. Some wounds, though hidden for years, bled anew when the dawn finally broke. The whispered names of conspirators stirred in the shadows, and in that charged silence, the battle for the empire's soul was no longer a distant threat, but a deadly promise carved by those closest to the throne. The heavy door clicked shut behind them, sealing the secrets within the sanctuary's solemn walls. The flickering lanterns cast wavering shadows on the rich tapestries and deep-carved wood, while scents of rose and musk clung stubbornly to the air, refusing to be drowned by the tension that choked the room. The billionaire sheikh stood motionless, like a statue carved from ancient stone, his gaze fixed on the woman before him. His silhouette, outlined by the soft glow, was rigid with authority. Yet, behind the cold fire in his eyes, a storm of conflicted emotions churned beneath a surface carefully honed by decades of power and betrayal. She met his stare without wavering. The burden of years spent in silence and exile weighed on her, but defiance burned brighter than any wound. Her voice, steady but trembling with passion, cut through the thick air. "I did not return seeking forgiveness," she said, "but to claim what is mine. The blood that runs through my veins is the very foundation of this empire." His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching with memories unspoken. "You come back like a wildfire burning through the desert night. Do you mean to destroy or to rekindle what we lost?" "Neither." Her eyes flashed, fierce and unyielding. "I return to expose the lies whispered under gilded ceilings, to confront the poison that has set itself loose in your court. I am not the girl you cast away. I am the storm you failed to see." The room seemed to shrink around them, the courtiers' murmurs fading into a deafening silence, as if the palace itself was holding its breath. Outside, the desert wind sighed, teasing at velvet drapes and stirring loose strands of her dark hair. A sudden, sharp rap on the door cracked through the stillness. The cloaked envoy, his eyes dark and unreadable, stepped forward. His voice was low, edged with cold urgency. "Your Highness," he said, "reports from the eastern border speak of unrest fueled by shadow deals. The alliances that hold this empire together are fraying, and enemies we cannot see gather beneath our feet." The sheikh's fingers clenched the heavy wood of the table until knuckles turned white. "The serpent's nest lies hidden close to the heart. We must strike it down before it poisons us all." Her gaze flickered toward him, her soul stirring, an unspoken understanding passing between them. No longer adversaries, they were prisoners of the same tempest. The stranger who had sheltered her remained silent, a solid presence in the storm of intrigues swirling around them. His rough, calloused hand brushed hers briefly, a quiet promise amid chaos. From the chamber's shadowed corner, the cloaked man who haunted the palace corridors emerged, his smile cold enough to freeze. "The desert sands. Loyalty," he hissed, voice coated in venom, "is a luxury betrayed by those closest to the throne. The knife that stings deepest is forged in the dark." The sheikh's voice, once calm, now rang like thunder. "Enough! No more whispers in the shadows. The time for truth has come. raw, brutal, unmasked. Taking a steady breath, she began her confession. I have walked in the halls of treachery. I have seen alliances born of fear and greed, the hands that barter with the future for gold. The threats we face are not only from outside these walls, but from the shadows within. The room held its breath. The stranger's eyes narrowed, a deep warning shining in their depths. The cloaked envoy shifted, tension thickening the stale air. Names, the Sheikh demanded, voice sharp as a blade. Allies, agents, you will tell me everything. Before she could respond, the chamber door burst open once more. A messenger, breathless with urgency, stepped inside, clutching a scroll sealed with the emblem of the northern tribes. Once loyal, now stained with marks unfamiliar and foreboding. The tribes rise, he declared, voice ragged with haste. Incited by hidden promises, they march upon our borders, threatening to engulf the empire. The Sheikh's eyes hardened, cold fury burning within. A betrayal deep as the desert's endless sands. Her gaze was steel. This war is no longer whispered in shadow. It is here, now, breaking through the gates. A heavy pulse of dread filled the chamber. The fragile balance of power, cracking like ancient stone made brittle by time. Facing him squarely, she threw down the gauntlet. I did not come as a pawn, nor as a forgotten shadow. I am the daughter of this dynasty, and I will fight, not only to survive, but to reclaim. The Sheikh's features tightened, the raw vulnerability beneath his armor flashing briefly before it was swallowed again by the mantle of the ruler. At the edge of this blade, we stand together, or fall divided. Outside, the desert night stirred, the moon veiled by thickening clouds that promised storm. The stranger's hand tightened around hers once more, a silent shield against the gathering darkness. His voice was barely a whisper, but heavy with warning. They watch us closely. The enemy lies not across the desert, but within these walls. Loyalty is scarce when power is at stake. Movement flickered behind the tapestries. The cloaked man's smile deepened, venom curling at the edges of his lips. I have been watching longer than you suspect, he said, voice a slither in the stillness. And I know the traitor waits not in the shadows, but among those you trust most. The Sheikh's hand drifted toward the dagger at his waist. Reveal yourself, or be counted among the enemies. Her eyes found the stranger's, the only true ally she could claim in a court poisoned by betrayal. Then back to her father, the man who held not just the empire, but the beating tempest of their shared bloodline. Her voice was fire, unwavering and clear. The deepest betrayal is not external warfare, but the lies kept beside the throne, and the silence that lets them fester. Silence fell, heavy as the desert heat at midday, as all waited for the storm to break. And beneath the layers of power and pride, the billionaire sheikh felt an ancient secret stir, the shadow lurking closer than ever, ready to unravel everything he had fought to protect. The dawn crept softly over the horizon, painting the palace walls in hues of gold and amber. Inside the private chamber, silence hung heavy, broken only by the steady breath of two figures facing the future, they had long feared to embrace. The billionaire sheikh's eyes, once as cold and unyielding as desert stone, now glimmered with a fragile warmth, a thaw born of pain, forgiveness, and a reluctant hope. His daughter stood before him, the weight of the past etched into every line of her face, yet a flame of resolve burning bright in her gaze. The scars of exile and betrayal had shaped her, but they did not define her. Tonight, their shared history was no longer a chasm, but a bridge, worn and weathered, yes, but real. "I see you," the sheikh said slowly, his voice low but steady, "not as the shadow I cast away, but as the woman you have become, my daughter, my blood." Tears, long held at bay, pricked her eyes, yet she held herself firm, a quiet smile softening the edges of her defiance. "And I see you, Father, not just the ruler, but the man who once feared losing what he didn't know he had." Their hands found each other in the space between words, a tentative touch that carried the weight of years unspoken. The palace, awake now with the gentle stirrings of morning, seemed to breathe along with them. Outside, the desert, wind's cool fingers swept through open windows, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine and promise. The storm that had raged inside these gilded walls began to settle, its thunder fading into a steady rhythm of understanding and reconciliation. The whispered rumors, the veiled accusations, and the poison brewed by those hungry for power were no match for the truth they now faced together. The returned daughter spoke next, her voice firm but laden with compassion. "I have seen the enemies that lurk beyond these walls, and those that hide within. But I am not here to unravel the empire alone. I have come to stand beside you, not against you." The sheikh's gaze locked with hers, the iron facade softening as he nodded. "There is much to mend, trust, loyalty, and perhaps love. The roots of our house run deep. They bend in the winds of betrayal, but do not break." A respectful murmur rose from the assembled courtiers who had been called to witness this moment. The air, once thick with suspicion, shimmered with cautious optimism. The court was no longer a battleground of shadows, but a stage set for a new beginning. The stranger, the humble man whose hands had sheltered the princess in her flight, stepped forward. His roughened palm parted her hair gently, a silent vow of protection etched into the sweep of his fingers. The sheikh regarded him thoughtfully, a nod acknowledging the courage and loyalty beyond wealth or title. "Perhaps," the sheikh mused aloud, "there is strength not only in blood, but in the hearts willing to fight for those they love. This is their home as much as mine." The daughter's lips curved into a serene smile, one that had been forged in fires of trial and tempered by hope. "Together, we will face the storms and rebuild what was broken. The empire, our family, will rise stronger." Outside, the sun climbed higher, spilling light over sand and stone, turning the desert into a mosaic of warmth and life. The palace gardens, once shadowed and quiet, stirred with renewed vibrancy, flowers unfurling, their colors bright against the morning. In the weeks that followed, the palace was transformed not by gold or decree alone, but by the healing hands of unity. The traitors revealed themselves, their webs dismantled by the sharp intellect and unyielding resolve of the sheikh and his daughter. The alliances, once threatened, were reforged with stronger bonds, built on truth rather than fear. Within the heart of the empire, love blossomed slowly but surely. The princess and the humble stranger, once worlds apart, found in each other solace and strength. Their hands intertwined in public as freely as in private, a symbol that love could transcend class, power, and past wounds. The billionaire sheikh watched this union, not with the suspicion of a ruler guarding his legacy, but with the quiet satisfaction of a father who had witnessed the restoration of his family. The empire he had forged with iron and fire, now tempered with compassion and trust. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the stars began their vigil, the sheikh stood upon the palace balcony, his daughter and the stranger by his side. The three silhouettes, framed against the sapphire sky, told a story of endurance and hope. "My daughter," he said softly, "you have reclaimed your place, and with you we have reclaimed the future." She leaned into him, a silent affirmation of belonging. The stranger squeezed her hand, a quiet promise of all the tomorrows yet to come. The desert stretched endlessly beneath the moon's gentle gaze, its sands forever shifting, but now touched by a light that promised peace. The palace, once a crucible of secrets and power struggles, had become a home bathed in new beginnings, and in that radiant quiet, the empire exhaled, its heart steady and sure. The billionaire sheikh had found redemption, his daughter had reclaimed her destiny, and love had blossomed in the most unlikely of places, a testament to the truth that even beneath the desert's relentless sun, the human heart could find its sanctuary.